we've got the engine. There's quite a lot of detail in the engine. There's a lot of character just in this part alone. And then we're getting pretty close, I think. Hello, this is BJ from Hearns Hobbies, and I'm up to part 9 of the GP3D build. So here's the engine that we've got so far. We've got exhaust pipes on it, and we started doing the drive shafts. So you can see from here, this is where we've got the drive shafts. Now, had a little bit of trouble with these, but I understand that Andy's been working on them and there is an improved version. So the particular car is always under development, and so there's certain parts that have been changed along the way. Front shock's been changed as well, but what I'll do is I'll complete this build as it's come out of this particular box, so it's an early production, and then we'll look at all the improvements at a later stage. All right, so here we go. We've got our manual's going to be here. Where's my manual? Over there. Okay, so we're into the engine details. Now I've completed all this. We're quite a fair bit down. Let's get to the drive shaft area. Got the trumpets. Done all that. All the exhaust, we've done that. That's the exhaust. Actually, I've done all that. Maybe it's on this side. Oh, here we go. Rear axles. Okay, so section 8, step 3. We've done those. So here they are there. All right, so now we're going to move on to step 4. So we're putting on the bearings. So I've got the bearings here. Okay, so we're going to slide these over. If it's a little bit too tight, then we're going to do a bit of sanding. Now, I've got the grob screws in here as well, and these ones are sitting out a little bit, so I'll screw them in so it doesn't block the bearing going on. Just want them to be under the flush point. Okay, and as the grob screw has been screwed in as well, as the thread goes through, it starts pulling up a little bit of material at the end there, which can block the bearing as well. So that's the area that we'll be sanding if need be. All right, let's see how we go. So I just test fit it. Okay, let's just try screwing this part in a little bit more. Okay, so let's give this a little bit of sand. So at the moment I'm just concentrating around about where the grob screws are vented. So that's one side. And you notice that I've curved the paper a little bit too, so we don't get a flat spot. Okay, let's give it a go. Still feeling a bit tight. We'll just go at it slowly because we don't want it too loose either. So by going slowly, we'll have a bit more control. Okay, now I'm going to go all the way around because it feels like it's probably clearing where it is tight around the grub screws, but a bit around the rest of this, which we just want to cut it down a bit. All right, try again. Okay, so it is feeling a little bit better. Still tight here where this grub screw is, so I think the grub screw is protruding a little bit. So I'll just spend a little bit more time here. Feels sort of close, right? I'm just going around all the way around circumference. Okay. Now as we're sanding, it's feeling better and better all the time. Now if I can get this to go over this grub screw, then I think we're pretty much home. Right, so I think that's the main sticking point at the moment. Let's try something a little bit heavier. So this is a 180 grit. Okay. Okay, so it looks like this grub screw is giving me a little bit of trouble. I think once we get it over this grub screw, we should be pretty good. probably going to help with a file to go through that grub screw. So let me just leave that for a moment. Let's try this other one. Okay, bit of sand. Okay. Alright, so it's starting to feel a bit snug. Now you just be careful, because I don't want to push it on if it's too tight, because I'll never be able to get that bearing off again. So just sand a little bit more along the inside. I think that's fairly snug. Let's have a look. See what it's like when we push it through here. I think I'm pretty happy with that, because when we put on the wheels, probably pull it up even tighter again. Alright, so that's one done. Let's continue working on this one. Just need to get this little metal nub out of the way. So let me go and find some more heavy duty sanding. Okay, got some of my trusty sanding blocks here. Well, it's getting better. Okay, so it's over that grub screw nub now, but I just need to sand down a little along this edge so I can pull tight. Okay, it's pretty close, I think. Maybe just needs a little bit more. Probably out by about 1 mil at the moment, so if I can just take off a little bit more material, we'll get that finally nipping up as we put on the wheels a bit later. So it still feels a little tight around here. Let's get this. Concentrate a bit more on this grub screw. Okay, I think I'll just leave it for the moment. So we're pretty close there. We've got the bearing on pretty much. Now let's see where we're up to here. Oh, this is timed out. Let's just re-log in. All right. Okay, so we've got that there. Okay, so we're meant to sand down a little bit until we get a flush and tight fit. Now we're going to slide the flange bearing, which is this one. Okay, so I want to test fit this one as well. And we want this to be firm as well, but so that it can slide in easily. Okay. Little nut that I put on here before is actually in the way now, so let me just get that off. Just lock this all together, so I'll screw that. Do the same for this one. Okay, let's try the bearing fit. Pretty tight, but it does definitely need sanding. And this one? Yeah, that's really tight. Okay. So we'll do exactly the same thing. We'll just start sanding this down a little bit. So this pressure is going to take some time on this one. Just took off that big bearing so I can get a better grip. Okay, now there we go. It's on, nice and snug. All right, let's put that bigger bearing back on. And that one's all good. So let's give this a little bit of a sand. Okay, and that's perfect. All right. Okay, so we're on to the next step now. So this is step 5. I'm going to be doing the rear uprights. So I had the uprights here before. Now we're just going to push these in. Very snug. Let's see. All right, so that's all the way in. Do this one as well. That's all the way in. And now we're going to put in the flange, which is going to go through the front here. So that's gone in really nicely. Try this one. Oh, that's fit in beautifully as well. Okay, so got our drive shaft, spinning within the rear uprights. There's that one there. Okay, so it's all good. So we just got to make sure that when we're looking at the uprights, there is a mounting point right here. We just make sure that they're facing outwards because there's a left and a right. Okay, from here we're going to move on to, we've got disc brakes. So we've got a disc here, we've got our adapters, and then we've got, let's see, what do we need? M2 countersunks by 4mm. Okay, so they must be the ones in here. Okay, so there's going to be a lot of these little countersunk screws. So we've got 4 per disc brake. Right, then one more. Okay, here we go. All right, so what size is that? 1.5mm, I think. 1.5mm it is. Okay, we've got that set. All right, so what are we going to do here? So let's spin these around. So we're going to make sure we align the hex center hole in the correct spot. Okay, so they're hexes because they're going to go onto the hex which is on the drive shaft. So we're just going to make sure they're aligned in the correct location. So you'll notice that these points on the hex are pointing to these screw holes, and then if we align that up so that this point is pointing those holes, we should be right. Now what I'm going to do, let's see if I need to, I might just open these holes up ever so slightly. That would just allow the first threads to bite easier. Okay, so I do all the discs like that. Now I'll line this one as well so that the tops of the hex are facing up and down. And with that, we'll make sure we open up all these holes so that these countersunk screws can tighten it up properly. Okay, so they're cleaned up. All right, so let's just make sure again, got the hexes facing up. It's pointing up, down. All right, so I want to mate that up like this. All right, so I've got that in there to locate first. Let's do this one as well. Now when there's multiple screws going into something like this, I always leave them loose, and then we do the tensioning of each one all the way around. Once we've got all the screws basically in place, that way we can make sure that you don't get any warp across the disc brake. It's the same idea when you're screwing together, say, the head of a petrol engine. They generally have 4 screws, and you just make sure you assemble it in a particular order so that it doesn't pull one side more than the other side. Okay, so every single one of these screws is still loose. Okay, so we've got those ready for tightening. Okay, so I'll show you. We'll tighten this one, then the opposing side, and then across here, and then the opposing side. So we'll only do a couple of thread turns at a time, and we'll keep going around in that order until it's fully tightened up. And that way it avoids warping. All right, so that one's done. Exactly the same action. So a couple of rotations of each screw. Go around in the same order. Okay, and then once finally, just to nip up everyone ever so slightly. All right, so they're done. Okay. Okay, before securing the remaining screws, double check that the hex shape is correctly aligned. Okay, so we just want to make sure that it looks like a hex shape in there. It looks like it there. Looks like it there as well. So these will be pushing through onto here. It feels like it's pretty good at the moment. All right, I think we're pretty right. Okay, let's move on to the next bit. Rear upright assembly. Okay, so we're going to be putting these all together, but with that, we're going to have some shims, so 6mm shims. All right, so we've got 2 of those. And the walnuts that we had before. Well, how about we'll grab some new ones. Okay, let's pop this back here. All right. So step 10, all right, so these holes need to be opened up with a 2mm bit. Okay, let's prepare that, that's easy enough. Alright, so it's done. Alright, so they're cleaned open. Slide the shim over the axle. Okay, so this is going over here. We'll do that on both sides. Alright, so this shim is just going to press against the inner race of the bearing. That'll be so that when we press this on, you don't get any drag of the disc brake touching the outer race. Now slide the brake disc over the axle, ensuring the hex shapes are aligned. Hold the back of the axle at the same time to stop it from sliding out, whilst pressing the disc brake all the way until it touches the shim. And then we'll tighten the 3mm lock nut. Okay, so with the 3mm lock nut tightened up, that should pull everything tight together. Okay, so that's just, at the moment, you can see how there's play between that. That's because the bearings are a little bit tight at the moment. We're just going to lock this up like I did before, taking the nut off, and we'll just tighten this up. Right, so that should squeeze everything together. I'll take care while doing that because I don't want to overdo it. Overdo it's going to create some drag. Well, that's already pulled it pretty tight. Now this is the tighter one which had the gap in it, so I'm going to try and do it up tighter to try to pull that all the way. And that is working quite a treat at the moment. It's pulling it pretty tight. Okay, so I want to ensure that this is going to be free. At the moment, there's quite a bit of, it's quite tight. Now I could probably back that off a little bit. Okay, and it's looser now. It's not as free as I'd like because I think this is going to need some running in. There's a little bit of a tight spot, but I think once we drive this, it's going to loosen up quite a bit. Okay, let's do exactly the same thing with this one. All right, so I'm going to push on this disc through the hex. Lock up that drive shaft, and then we're going to tighten it up with a nut. Okay, so again, I'm going to pull this tight. Okay, and that actually feels pretty free. Still a little bit tight, but I'm sure they'll run in as well. Okay, easy. All right, so we've got our two hubs done. All right, so we're going to move on to some more complicated parts. So we've got the rear suspension, this is step 11. We've got to do our shocks. So here's the shocks we built earlier. We've got some arms. Now there's a left and right here as well. This area is chamfered for the shock, I think. We've got these trailing arms. All right, so there's a long one and a short one. Let's see, note a shorter pair. Okay, so we need the shorter ones. So it'll be that one and that one. And then we've got hinge pins. And then the various screws. So 2 by 10 countersunk. 2 of those. 2 by 10 bolt. So 4 of these. That's a bit too long. And slightly longer ones. 2 by 12s by 2. That's not it. All right, so we've got all our bits. Let's move on. Okay, so we're going to drill out these arms with a 2mm bit. Let's stretch this out, it's not going to go all the way. Okay, that's cleaned out. All right, so we'll do this one as well. So bear in mind where I'm screwing here for the king or the hinge pin, the hole here doesn't go all the way through. Okay, so just be careful you don't go all the way through, because otherwise this hinge pin is going to fall out. Okay, so it looks like we have to do the ends as well. Okay, so we'll clean that out. Right, so now we're going to pop this hinge pin but only until it's flush. So what do they mean by flush? Let's see. Let's pop this in. It's the inside face. Flush with the inside face. Okay, so it's just flush to this point. All right, so I guess we're just mounting this hinge pin here, getting ready to put it into its assembly. So same with this one. All right, so I've got two flush points here. Let me move these screws out of the way. Okay, now we're going to line up the rear upright. Okay, let's make sure we get the right way around. So let's use the one that's in the diagram here. So I've got that. And then we want the right one with, looks like this mounting hole pointed this way. Okay, so we'll put this in here. Let's make sure that, enlarge that, yes. All right, so let's line this up and get this hinge pin in there. Okay, so I'm just going to use the end of something flat like this. Just press it through. Okay, so I just want to ensure that that's connected there. And that's probably a little tighter than I would normally like with a suspension arm. Now in this case we'll probably sand down the sides a little bit just to make that a bit freer. Actually I might as well do that now since it's here. Actually it does feel really smooth here though, so it must actually be through these holes here that it's grabbing, which isn't a great problem then. In this case it will probably run in. It does feel a little bit tight. Yeah, that'll run in. Okay, let's leave it. All right, let's make sure we put that in the right way again. Okay, so it's like this. Okay, there we go. There's one right there. Okay, so let's make sure we do both. All right, get that aligned correctly. All right, so there we go, 2 arms. Now next step, step 13, is going to be a bit more complicated because we're going to be putting this all together on the engine. So I've got our engine here. All right, let's move some of this gear, make some room, put these here. All right, so we're going to do one side at a time. I'm going to be doing the right hand, so let's make sure we get the right hand one. So here we go there. Okay, so we're going to assemble that. Let's just zoom in on here. Okay, so this is going to get screwed in. Where's that? Is that a lower hole? There's only one hole, yep. That's with a 2x10. Okay, so one of these. All right, so with these, I'm going to open those up just slightly, just to get the first threads in. I'll do all these. Okay. All right, so the arms sit on top of the suspension arm. Now I'm going to tighten these up until the arm's totally tight. You can see there, and then I'll back it off until it starts to rotate. Just a little bit of drag. Okay, so that's what we want there. We want it free moving. Okay, so we'll do exactly the same for the other side. So again, tighten it up until it's just finger tight. So you see how that's really tight now. Now back it off a little bit until it starts rotating freely by itself. It's still tight. Okay, and that's what we want. So by adjusting it like this, that means you reduce the amount of play that's there, but you still have all the free movement, which is what you want from suspension. Okay, so we've got our two sides there. All right, what have we got next? We're going to put on one of these lower trailing arms. Oh, actually, I need to put the shock on. So the shock, now these are only going in one direction as well. Just make sure. Got the right one. Okay, so this is the one for the right. Now that's going to be fixed in place. Countersunk screw, so that's this one here. Well, that's going to go into here. Right, so it's a smaller driver. I think I'm doing this right for some reason. Okay, so that's meant to go over the hinge pin. So let's slide that onto the hinge pin. Yeah, that makes more sense. And then this countersunk screw must capture it. Rotate the top spring retainer. Yes. Okay, so this countersunk. Oh, hang on. Countersunk. Oh, that cap. Okay. I'm misreading all this. Going a bit fast. Alright, so that's slid onto there. Now we're going to use a bolt to fasten the shock onto the top of the shock tower. Okay, so 2x10 will go through here. Okay, so I've tightened that all the way up. It's got a little bit of movement. I probably want to back that off a little bit, so make sure it can rotate freely. Probably want a bit more movement there. Okay. Alright, so that's pretty special. So that's all working now, that shock and that arm. Okay, good stuff. All right, let's keep going along. All right, from here we're going to do the trailing arm. Okay, so this is how I see the shock getting captured on the bottom here now. So what do we need? Okay, the rear would end, we need the M2 by 12. Okay, so this is longer ones. All right, let's just drill out these. Make sure the movement is nice and smooth. Alright, so that's going to screw into this point. I'll just put it in loose for the moment. And then the end. Okay, so the countersunk holds it in the front here. Alright, so I'm going to leave them loose here because I want to get it to the point where it's going to rotate freely. Okay, so as I've tightened it up, we'll just make sure it still moves and it's smooth. Probably back this off a little bit. Okay, and now let's tighten up this back one. Okay, so we're going to leave about half a mil there, making sure that suspension still works. It's all fine. Okay, so we've got our arms in place. Okay, so we've got the first trailing arm there. The screw from the trailing arm is locking the bottom of the shock in place, and the top of the shock's been screwed in. Okay, so that means we'll move on to doing exactly the same thing on the other side. All right, so my shock's going to go on here. And then we'll screw it in with the 10 mil. Okay, it is a 10 mil. Okay, so we'll leave a little bit of a gap there so I can move freely. Again, we'll check to make sure that that shock's working. It's quite nice how all the suspension's working now. Okay, and now we'll do the lower strut. Okay, so this one's at the back. Screw this in a few turns just to get it located, and then we'll do the front one. Okay, that's tightened all the way, and now I'm going to back it off a bit. Okay, and now we'll tighten up the back one. And the back one leaving about a half mil gap. So it's not too tight and it's got nice smooth movement. Okay. There we go. All right, so we've got our lower suspension on. That's all working very nicely. You can see the independent suspension there. Starting to look really nice. All right. Okay, let's check the next stage. Let's see if we've got enough time. Let's see. So it's fairly involved. We've got all these little links, rear suspension, sway bar. So I think we're a bit tight today for that. So we'll move on to our next build to complete the rest. But with that, this is where we're at the moment. Okay, so we've got the engine. There's quite a lot of detail in the engine. There's a lot of character just in this part alone. So you see, we've got our whole engine that we built previously. We had the exhaust on, and we just fit all the suspension components on. Still more to go. There's upper links and the upper trailing arms. And then we're getting pretty close, I think. All right, so thanks again for joining me for this great build of this unique car. So join me next time for some more action, and we'll have all the rear suspension done by that stage. But it's been fun so far. So thanks again, and if you've got any questions, please leave them below in the comments, and I'll get to you as soon as I can. So see you next time.